Welcome to Shalom World Podcasts. Coming to you from the heart of World Youth Day 2023 in Lisbon, we have a truly inspiring guest with us, Bishop Fintan Gavin, the Bishop of Cork and Ross, and also the Chair of the Council for Pastoral Renewal and Adult Faith Development in Ireland, joins us to share his profound insights and experiences from this incredible gathering of young people from all around the world.
I'm joined now by Bishop Fintan Gavin. He is the Bishop of County Cork in Ireland. He has a doctorate in canon law, and he also is on the chair of the Council for the Renewal of Adult Faith Development. So we'll talk a little bit about that later. But first, we just have to hear, Bishop Fintan, I know it's not your first World Youth Day. Tell us a little bit about this experience compared to other experiences. How have you been finding it so far?
Well, it's been wonderful. I'm here for my first time as a bishop with 40 young people from Cork and Ross. And for them, it's the first. So Cork and Ross have come before. So it's lovely to just see the experience unfolding. It's very hard to explain to anyone what World Youth Day is.
That feeling, I mean, I was on the same flight as Bishop Gavin's group of 40 people from his diocese. And from the queue to the plane to the landing, the joy was just incredible. And it's right, it's hard to describe.
Yeah.
And I know that there's been a lot of work, as I'm sure is happening in so many dioceses across the country, in advance of World Youth Day, where you are journeying with these young people.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's really important. World Youth Day is an experience, but to have that experience, you have to do the preparation. So we had a number of events in preparation with the young people, giving them what we described as the tools to try and unpack the experience. So introducing them to prayer, silence, meditation, doing some kind of journaling so they can reflect on the experience. And just, again, bring them through very common elements like the Mass that we take for granted, but just to explain what's going to be happening, the experiences. And so having done that, then it opens up the experience. They meet so many people from so many different nationalities that share their faith, and that's really heartening for them.
I imagine building a relationship, whether it's just even within the 40 members of your own group, or the people that they meet all throughout World Youth Day over the course of the days, that building of relationship, building of community, of unity, maybe people from other different countries coming together has to have some kind of formative effect for them. Have you recognized that?
Yeah, I think so. I think that sense that they're not alone, that they're part of a universal church. The catechesis this morning was very interesting.
So tell us a little bit about that, because you were giving a catechesis.
So I was giving a catechesis this morning. It was being animated by the Diocese of Brooklyn, and there was Canadians there, there was French there, Portuguese, Filipinos, and just to share that experience. So we were reflecting, I suppose, on the message of World Youth Day this year, just getting them into that experience of the encounter with Christ, Mary, this notion of being a model of discipleship. And from that then into the ecology. How do you connect your faith, your relationship with God, to your neighbor, and then to creation, your common home? And just to hear the vast experience from the whole world, the different experience, and yet the commonality in that is just really...
Do you think there's a real heart from the young people that you connect with today on that issue?
Yeah, I think there is. And I think one of the challenges I find at home and in visiting schools is that the young people are into the environment, and you're trying to connect it with God and creation, saying, well, what's that got to do with it? So it's trying to bring people back to that.
Connect the dots.
Connect, the story of creation, the experience of God, and through that then. And so it was good to explore that with the young people today.
And so did you have, in your time together during the catechesis session, any kind of testimony or witness of people that, when they have the aha moment, when they have that, when making faith not just a concept, or a worldview, but actually personal and real, the same kind of yes of Mary, like, yes, I sent to this, I agree. Were there experiences like that today?
There was. Well, we had an experience of a young seminarian from Brooklyn who kind of told something of his story. And there was a young guy, a second-year student, who was at college, who's studying environmental studies. And for him to be able to do that connection between his faith and the environmental issues was quite something else.
I think it's something that is so important for us to really highlight it to young people, because, as you say, Bishop Fintan, there is such a heart for young people to look after our common home. But looking after our common home starts with looking after our neighbour. Mm-hmm. And that's the second commandment. And also just this whole idea of what Pope Francis always talked about, live more simply.
Yes.
And if we live more simply, we will consume less, the knock-on effects would be caring for our neighbour, caring for the planet.
I think part of it is that sometimes we can feel a bit overwhelmed. This is too big to take on, but when you start breaking it down into concrete actions that we can take in our own lives, then it becomes something real.
Yeah.
And I think that's what happened for many of the young people today. They kind of started connecting it with their own stories and then hearing from other people. It was interesting. We had different continents there, different experiences.
Different challenges in those places.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I imagine, even with my own experience attending World Youth Days in my youth, there's always that going home, going back to the real world.
Yeah, what happens next?
And how do we integrate how we've been changed and transformed? How do we change some of the patterns or our habits in our life, caring for one another? How do we integrate that into our normal life with maybe the friends back home don't know or understand what we've experienced? And so what advice would you give to young people today for that?
Yeah, I think you have to help young people with it. I think unless you follow up and meet with them, talk through the experiences, and again, to continue to kind of develop those tools.
What's the plan? Have you got a plan for when everybody
We're
gets
working on
home?
a plan. We've certainly, and I've actually asked the young people, particularly some in our own group of 40, it's some who are just 18 finishing their leaving cert, the high school for those who aren't familiar with our Irish system, and then some who are coming towards the end of their youth day experiences, and just saying to them, how can we actually help you to keep this experience alive? How can we help this to make this part of your life? So I think initially we'll certainly bring them together for a gathering, and then try and see how we can kind of continue it on, that it's not just an event. We had this experience, we had our gathering tonight as well for all our Irish people here. There's over 2,000 Irish pilgrims.
Wow.
So to see them all together, and just, we prayed together, we kind of told our Irish story, or retold it from the different kind of saints and moments of particular faith that we've had in Ireland. And just the conversations after were saying, how do we create this for our young people in Ireland? How do we bring them together and connect them? And that was one of the requests that they had. We want to kind of replicate this.
One of the things I wanted to ask you, Bishop Fintan, is because obviously we've been talking a lot about the impact this is having on the pilgrims, the young people here today, but there is another important element, which is that of vocation and the power of seeing. It was 7,000 priests that processed in and could celebrate the Mass yesterday was just incredible.
Powerful.
What sort of an impact does that have on you and your own vocation, seeing so many other brother priests?
I suppose it's a real affirmation, and it's a sense of the responsibility you have as a priest, as a bishop, and just to be there, and that solidarity that's there. It's wonderful. We brought our 2 young seminarians with us as well, and again, we have a number of people in the group who are discerning either religious life or priesthood. So it's trying to encourage and kind of create a culture where that's okay to have that kind of conversation. So that's something I think we have to work on.
Yeah, and I got to say too, as I had this moment in my young adult life, near the end of my young adult life, where I had this realization that every bishop is a successor of another bishop, all the way back to the original apostles. And I had this moment of like, wow, like, isn't that incredible? Like, and it just made me feel so small, and how incredible, how magnificent the church is that Jesus Christ established, and how he's calling us to be a sign in that. And it's just incredible to see and to witness so many bishops who are on fire, who are willing to give of themselves to serve in such a way, to be a sign, to faithfully live out their faith and example to others. So I want to commend you for your presence and for your efforts in doing that. And just on behalf of the young people, I want to thank you. Thank you so much for being a sign of living faith today.
I appreciate that. I suppose one of the humbling things, I'm only a bishop 4 years. It was never somewhere where I saw myself. This was obviously something that the Holy Spirit, Pope Francis, plans that I didn't have any. But one of the things that again and again that has really helped me over these years is the prayers of other people, the support, that sense that doesn't depend on you, depends on God. You just give your best, and then the rest. And I've seen so many examples over these last 4 years that's happened. So that's it's because it's humbling. Yeah. The responsibility is huge.
Yes.
But when you share that responsibility, or you give that responsibility over to God, you only do your best and let God do the rest.
How do you feel, Bishop Fintan, impact just you and your ministry going back into Ireland? Because I'm sure it will impact you and give you a new ideas, new energy. Being able to kind of bring that back. It's the same, as we were talking about for young people going back. What happens next? But it's similar for bishops or priests.
Yeah. I suppose it's a very affirming experience as a priest, as a bishop, just to see so many young people on fire with their faith. And young people, as we know, are very challenging. They're able to kind of see that what's important, and they challenge all of us to keep that kind of focus, because sometimes we can get so waylaid with the challenges, the problems, the complexity, and sometimes we just need to be brought back to the basics. And I suppose World Youth Day does that, keeps us focused on the central message and the energy and the joy that our faith can bring to us.
Well, I wanted to ask you about that, is because, when the young people go back from an experience like this, they go back to their families. And I wanted to ask you about your initiative with Adult Faith Formation, and how having a family unit be on fire for faith is so impactful, and how we can help foster that in families. I was, as a father of 5 girls myself, my wife and I are always we're striving to try and do our best to model the faith for them. Growing up in a home where one of my parents, my mom, she was, practicing Catholic by obligation at first, and my dad was nothing. He didn't believe in anything. And so I know firsthand the struggle in that. And so how can we help foster the faith in families, especially with adults, as with parents, so that we can continue the seeds that have been sown here at World Youth Day?
I suppose that's one of those really big questions.
In 30 seconds or so, if you could just,
I think it's about bringing it back to the family. It's about encouraging the family, supporting the family, knowing that that's where faith comes from, and making sure that we empower this co-responsibility that Pope Benedict talked about, where, the lay faithful together with the priests and the bishops. I think that's the future of our church, and to empower our families to take that responsibility, encourage them, support them, and give them the formation for that.
I think that's something that you really feel at World Youth Day, is that co-responsibility, to use that word, where, when you're as you are, when you're walking down whatever street where there's thousands of young people, different flags, so you might see a cardinal, you might see a bishop, walking together, journeying together. And I think that's really, it's something that's very powerful here. To think that this new springtime that people might feel at an event like this, is that something that's, because for so many of the young people here today that are, say, 18, 19, 20, they've only known this kind of church where it is about that co-responsibility of the lay and priests and religious to work together.
I think it's about creating that kind of a culture. It's a change of culture that is co-responsibility. It goes back to our baptism. All of us called to our baptisms. I was lucky enough in February to be at a conference in Rome with Pope Francis on co-responsibility. And so we had a whole week of talks and lectures, and he came in on the Saturday morning, and he kept saying to us, he said, you're the holy people of God, and only then can we talk about bishops and priests and laity. It's our baptism that calls us, and from our baptism, all of us are called to live our vocations, and it's trying to really deepen that and share that so that we can journey together.
What would you say, Bishop Fintan, to young people that maybe they're just watching, they're joining in, or they're going to be watching back those clips, who are on that journey of discernment, specifically in relation to vocation? Because you mentioned yourself, there's maybe one or two in your group that maybe are discerning what's God asking of me, how to respond to that.
Sure, I suppose it's to trust God and to go deeper with prayer and listen to the Spirit. I do believe that there's no doubt that World Youth Day is one of those very key moments for people on that journey, where God speaks a particular way, and this, the support and the encouragement of people around, just to take that risk. We've in Ireland, as you know, Wendy, we've this year for diocesan priesthood, we're talking about taking a risk for Christ. And it's something about, in the culture we're in today, taking that risk and, finding ways of supporting people to take that risk, creating a culture where it's okay to talk about a vocation to the priesthood or religious.
Oh, Bishop Fintan, thank you so much for being with us. We'll be praying for you. I know you have some more catechesis to do over the coming days, and thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us today. Tuned into Shalom World Podcast for this extraordinary event that celebrates faith, love, and unity.